Hi, my name's Andrew. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to go through a fundraising process case study, which will be suitable for you if you're looking to raise capital in 2025. So to start off with, this is a program that I have actually prepared for one of my clients to assist them with a detailed fundraising program. It is very comprehensive, and it can be used pretty much for any type of fundraising. Most of the stuff that I work on is anywhere from about 50 million to 250 million and up. You're going to see more about my bio at the very end of the video. I've left that for last. So let's just start. Key initial items that you're going to need. I always like to start things off with some sort of a kickoff meeting, and that can be done in person or it can be done in Zoom call. So that's a in-depth meeting to discuss the company's strategic plans, funding requirements, and review any existing funding commitments. It's also a great way for everybody to get together and introduce themselves. Due diligence review. We would examine all existing due diligence materials, including research reports, if they have a PPA or other feasibility studies, case studies, technical reports, and any related documentation. Anything that's needed should be dumped into a Dropbox or some other sort of storage that can be accessed freely. Anything that is very proprietary and privileged, it can be set aside for future discussion. Now, if it's a real estate project, for example, which is what I tend to focus on, or something regarding some sort of a development, you'd like to make sure that you can do some sort of a site analysis and visit. So you need to perform a comprehensive analysis of the project site, including on-site visit to assess logistical and technical considerations. I was involved in real estate many years ago, and one of the first things we did whenever I got assigned a project, we went over to see the land, no matter where it was. It might not have been in the same country, but we generally like to have our feet on the ground. It's hard to really get a scope of a project by looking at maps or Google Earth. It's really good to get your feet on the ground. You're also going to do a financial review or look at it, so analyze the company's financial reports and projections to validate the business model and assess funding alignment. Again, these are key initial items. And then a task and deadline creation. So there has to be a developed list of tasks and establish general deadlines. Keyword there is general, ensuring alignment with project priorities and funding objectives. So those are the first key initial items that you're going to look at whenever you start a fundraising campaign. So now let's take a look at some of the deliverables. And again, this is everything that's in this is part of a contract, part of the appendix of a contract that I will do when I get appointed. I'll say, listen, here's what we're going to do. Now, most of this stuff is going to have to flow. There's going to be missed deadlines. There's going to be information the client can't get, but it's basically a work plan that you can at least start to communicate what you would do if you're going to do fundraising, whether it's internal or whether you're going to do it for a third party. So let's take a look at the typical deliverables. So establishment of a due diligence data room. I use Dropbox. Set up a secure centralized repository to organize all due diligence documentation. And as mentioned before, you can have certain levels that the DD gets looked at depending on what stage the client is in. Initial clients are obviously going to be able to look at some things, but they're not going to be able to look at detailed stuff until there's a process set. Finalization of financial projections. So this is to refine and confirm the company's financial projections to align with investor expectations and project milestones, and also to make sure it's complete. Just because a client says that their financials are done and complete doesn't necessarily mean they're complete to put in front of an investor. Those are two different things. Investment parameters and term sheet clarification. Again, the early stages, you're going to define and clarify the key investment parameters and term sheet details in collaboration with stakeholders. That could change over time as well. Development of the investment memorandum. So that's going to oversee and manage the creation of a complex investment memorandum to present to potential investors. Now remember, a lot of this information, if you've been brought on to, let's say, be their fundraising manager or head of fundraising, is These are going to be created by other people, but you would be managing them, and which is sort of what I would do. Then we're going to look at the creation of investor outreach materials. That's something that could be done collaboratively. Draft and prepare tailored investor outreach letters and related communication materials. Refinement of investor targeting strategy. Again, collaborate with the company to enhance and finalize a strategic approach for targeting potential investors. Management and creation of the investor presentation. So there's a number of them that are going to be involved. So that's develop and manage critical investor-facing materials, one-page teasers, for example, pitch deck, and then detailed project presentation. Until you have all three, you're not ready to go out to investors. Coordination with third-party private equity firms. In some cases, you may, as an internal group, you may go out to a private equity firm and say, listen, we want you to help us with some of the items regarding our fundraising. They could come in as a quasi-lead investor, or they could just help you with the due diligence and some of the material. But that you would liaise with them in the very beginning, and that's part of what I would do in a case like this. So let's take a look at the general timelines, but keep in mind this is based on best practice, and almost always the timelines are never what the client wants. Clients have to have realistic expectations, and I would usually, when walking into an assignment like this, and this is a draft plan for an actual real assignment, I would say you're going to be looking at a year, so let's break it down to how we're going to do that. Usually when they hear a year, there's a bit of pushback, but they have to understand that if you're trying to raise $50 million, $100 million, $200 million, it does take time, and you cannot miss any of the steps, and that's really key. So again, we talked about the key initial items. This is the timing involving those, and again, very it's an item that's going to move quick. So kickoff meeting, that should happen within 1 to 2 weeks of getting an assignment. So you're going to conduct an in-depth meeting to review strategic plans, funding requirements, and existing funding commitments. It's important that the client divulge everything right up front. Treat it like going to a lawyer. If you're having a lawyer that you want to represent you, you're going to put everything on the table. You don't want to hold anything back. Again, figure that could be a 1 to 2 week process, because from the time you say to the client, hey, I want to do a kickoff meeting, it could take them a couple weeks to get everything together and get everybody together as well. Due diligence review, 2 to 3 weeks. I've seen it happen 3 months. Where you examine all DD, including research reports, any PPAs, contracts, feasibility studies, case studies, technical reports, and other documentation. Really key, because every single document matters, and it all has to be correct, all has to be verified and validated, and that's generally the longest process. Even though it says 2 to 3 weeks, that's being very conservative. Site analysis, and again, depending on whether you get a site, it could be 3 to 4 weeks before you put your foot on the ground on a site. Financial review, 2 to 3 weeks. Again, any of these could be 2 to 5 weeks. Analyze companies' financial reports and projections, validate the business model to ensure funding alignment. Everything is going to be based on when were the financials created, when were they updated, and do we have to do them all again from scratch because of the changes in direction, changes in the economy, changes in the founders' goals. So again, but it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks at minimum for somebody almost on a full-time basis to go through them. These aren't just things you just look at once every few days. This is a full-time assignment for somebody within the company. If they can't do it, they need to outsource it. Most of the time, if you're looking to raise $50, $100 million, $200 million, you generally have somebody internal that's pretty good at it, although a second set of eyes is always going to help. And then task and deadline creation, that's generally 1 to 2 weeks. So that's developing a detailed task list and establish general outlines aligned with the project priorities and funding objectives. The one I've done for this case is around 11 pages on a Word document, very detailed. And that's what you're going to need to start off with, because everything needs to be done in an order, and there are certain things that have to be done before you can move to the next step. So those are the key initial items. And then sticking with the same general timelines, typical fundraising deliverables, establishment of a DD room. That could take 2 to 3 weeks depending on who's setting it up, who's inputting it. DD could come from many people within an organization, and even myself. I include DD that I collect research based information that sometimes the client doesn't even have access to. Finalization of financial projections are going to be dumped in there as well. Investment parameters and term sheets. Again, everything gets thrown in here that is for the eyes of the team only. There's nothing that gets thrown in there that's ready for the potential investors yet. Creation of investor outreach materials, again, a 2-week process. A number of eyes are going to be involved in that. The last versions I like to have looked at by at least 3 people in the company and myself, because almost always there's going to be somebody that will see something that everybody else missed. And you'd be surprised what gets missed when one-pagers get sent out to clients and they don't have phone numbers right, emails right. There's a problem with the website. There's something is always missing. I find before it goes out. So that's why you have 3 or 4 people take a look at it. Same with management and creation of investor presentations. Those are more detailed. Pitch deck has to be complete. Generally, what I like to see from a client, business plan or their investment memorandum gets made, then you're going to make your pitch deck, and then you're going to make the one teaser off of that. So there's a bit of a process. If you start off with the big main document, it's easier to go to a pitch deck from there, or a presentation in this case. And then coordination with third-party equity firm. Again, this is an ongoing process. If you decide to have one help you out, then they're going to be able to not only supply information from their side, but they're probably going to be able to look through the DD. Managing the DD and who has access to it can be complicated in the very beginning, but for the most part, it's really important to set up the process so everybody's in line and they're not storing things on their own systems. When they're done working on something related to it, it all has to be put back into the DD file. Now we look at investor outreach campaign schedule. So this is again draft. Usually when somebody gets appointed to help with fundraising, client says, when can you start going out to investors? And you can see from the previous slides, well, it's not going to be today or tomorrow. There's going to be a process involved. And in many cases, it depends on who you're going to go out to. I'm fortunate to have a large amount of investor databases that I can start with. Many of them are refined. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I have over 400,000 investor contacts. And again, nobody goes out to 400,000, but I have a number of high profile, highly refined databases that I would use for fundraising. And in the case of this example, I've already got that part of the job done. If you don't have that part of the job done, then you would be looking at least a couple of weeks in most cases to work on a full-time basis to do screening for who you want to go out after. Preparation phase, the development of the outreach strategy could take 2 to 3 weeks. That's where you define campaign goals, target investor profile that I just touched on, overall outreach strategy in collaboration with the company. For example, you know, everybody is a salesperson for the company that works in fundraising, and that may seem a bit of a casual statement, but it's very true. The founders and the principals are going to be reaching out to people. There's going to be people within the company at the director level, usually even sometimes managers, and then someone like myself will go out as well. And even the private equity firm as well. So there could be 3 or 4 different hands that are on the investment material going out to different groups, so it's good to coordinate those as well. Again, the compilation and review of materials, again, that's going to take 3 to 4 weeks. Don't be in a rush to go out to clients. You can only go out to them once. If you make a mistake, they're going to probably say, well, if you can't even get your marketing material completed, how can I trust to invest $50 million to $100 million in your project? And there's something to be said about that. Data room setup, again, 2 to 3 weeks. Organize and launch a DD and ensuring all critical documents are uploaded, and to make sure that those that have access to the more confidential items also are informed of the process. So when you do the initial outreach, so everything's done, the DD's done, all the material's done, that's when you finalize the target list. You share the investor list with the company, for example, in my case. And in some cases, the founders may say, listen, I'd like to go out to these people personally. And then I may say, well, let me go out to these people, and then we would take the ones in the middle and say, listen, those are ones that can be approached. Everybody gets approached individually, no mass emails, everything very, very one-on-one when it comes to this type of fundraising. That's why it could take up to a year by the time you get the funds, because it does take a long time. Distribution of initial materials, again, 1 to 2 weeks to get the teaser out. The one pager usually is the first thing that goes out. Then once you get interest, then it's following up with additional documents. Again, one thing that companies should realize, sometimes they say, well, should I ask for an NDA? Definitely not. Anything that you send out in the teaser should be something that you're comfortable putting on a website, for example, and letting the world take a look at. Nothing's going to be there confidential. If you're looking to raise capital for your funds, it's never a secret, and there's usually generally nothing in the early stages that an NDA would be required for. Later on, yes, you can do that for sure, but I generally look at the process of, have they done an LOI, has there been an MOU started to be drafted. So there's a stage when NDA is a friendly document, but it's definitely not in the early stages. And then follow up on scheduling of meetings, and that could be 2 to 4 weeks. So you're going to conduct follow-ups. You answer everybody who requests some information, regardless of who it's from, because you're going to want to know who they are. 1, are they your competition? 2, are they an actual investor? 3, are they somebody in the industry that's just poking around, wanting to know what's going on? You're going to be able to flush that out easily. Simply done. You Google their name, Google their company, check their website. You're going to get a pretty good idea of who they are in the early stages. So then once you start to get some response, that's the engagement phase. A little bit deeper, that could be 4 to 8 weeks. You're going to facilitate investor meetings, including delivering the pitch deck in some cases if it's someone locally, and detailed project presentations to highlight the investment opportunity. Generally, if it's a situation where you're trying to raise $50, $100, $200 million, depending on where you are and how the founders are and who the investor is, there's a chance to do meetings, even if you have to fly out to them. That happens. Almost always it's going to be a Zoom meeting in the very beginning. Zoom has really changed the way people collaborate and connect in the past few years. 25 years ago, you'd have to get on a plane to go from New York to California to talk to a potential investor. Now you can do it purely on your laptop. So responding to investor queries ongoing during engagement. So this could stretch on to 6 to 8 weeks. You're going to address questions, providing additional data, coordinate follow-ups. I always like to say that every single response that comes in from an initial outreach be answered by the founder, somebody at the company who is going to be the contact. Nobody needs to be a hero in fundraising other than the founders or the principals of the company. It doesn't make any sense for me, for example, if I'm the fundraising manager, to try to answer a number of questions get posed to me by a potential investor in the beginning. It's always best to pass those on, because at the end of the day, that person that's going to be asking those questions, the best time for them to your company to build rapport with them is in the very beginning. Our jobs as fundraisers is to get the message out, open up the doors, and let the key players discuss the terms. Which comes to the negotiation and commitment phase. Well, a term sheet, term sheets start off with basic terms in the beginning, and then it it changes over time, 2 to 4 weeks per investor in some cases, and it could be different for each investor. Depending on the quality of them, what they bring to the table, everyone's going to be different. So you're going to negotiate key investment terms and finalize preliminary agreements with investors. Due diligence support, 4 to 6 weeks. This is where the tough questions will come in. And a lot of times the questions from the key investor will be passed down to some analysts or directors within their own company, and they're going to want to communicate with the DD team at the company that is looking for the investment funds. So again, even though the founder and the investor may make the initial contact after the first outreach, a lot of times then there's a bit of a separation and the internal teams work on a lot of the nitty-gritty, which is where the DD comes into play. Again, it's really important to understand there's a timeline, and you cannot rush it because both parties are going to have delays for whatever reasons. And it could be technical, it could be an internal reason, it could be holidays, so that DD could stretch into months rather than just weeks. And then investor commitments, you want to secure some sort of formal commitments, including signed agreements from investors. A lot of times this is going to happen naturally. An investor is going to make the initial contact. They're going to look at the DD. Then they're going to say, hey, can we take a look at your financials or a little bit more about your information? That's when you're going to say, listen, I'd like to get a letter of intent from you, expression of interest, something that says, hey, we're at this area of terms, and to move forward that you're going to want to have some sort of commitment. And that's when I generally say, listen, you should put a 60-day period on it where they're able to look at it. Maybe a 30-day exclusivity, depends on what the situation is. You don't want to stretch it out too far until it's the final process. And most importantly, the closing phase. That's when final documentation and a legal review happens. That could be 3 to 4 weeks. Collaborate with legal teams to finance all required documentation and fund disbursement and investment close. When it comes to lawyers, unfortunately, you cannot rush them. I've worked for a number of organizations where almost always the delays in getting deals done sit at their desk. And it's not that they're dilly-dallying or don't want to get to it. It's just that they're trained, and it's through their education, to go step by step and analyze everything. And the issue as well is that stack of documents on their desk is going to be passed on to maybe a paralegal, someone that works, or a junior lawyer at their own firm, and that junior lawyer is going to be a million times more careful about looking over it because they're not as confident, and it takes time to get back. For people like myself and the company, we hate that whole process. And it's not only lawyers, but sometimes accountants are the same way. They like to look over a piece of paper 20 times before issuing a check when it only needed to be looked at maybe twice. But that's just the nature of the game. That's why it's best to have your process, your DD, clean and clear, and it will help shorten some of this timeline so you get to the capital deployment in 1 to 2 weeks, coordinate the transfer of funds, and ensure compliance with all agreed on terms. Seems like a simple process, but believe me, all this, and I have another checklist that's part of this that I'm using for this particular case as well. Again, it's 11 detailed Word documents with every step planned out to show the fundraising process, and that can be basically tuned for any type of fundraising that is happening. So let's take a final look here. The total timeline, 24 to 36 or 6 to 9 months, depending on the project complexity, investor responsiveness, and external factors. I hope you enjoyed that video. Just a quick bit about myself. I'm a fundraising strategist with 15 years of experience in high-end real estate sales and marketing spanning Canada, Dubai, and the Caribbean. And over the last 3 years on Fiverr, I've assisted over 300 clients with startup fundraising, pitch deck refinement, investor outreach strategies, and custom investor databases. In addition, I serve as an advisor to a New York-based private equity firm with capital commitments of $10 billion. This capital is strategically allocated to projects across the Middle East, Asia, and the USA, with a focus on income-generating real estate. The firm offers both debt and equity financing, with investment sizes ranging from $10 million to $100 million per project. You can get more information about my background and services by clicking my Fiverr link below. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe.